cup of tea next to all the electronic equipment. That would make me really happy.
Okay, I guess I can.
Okay, so I want to welcome everyone. I'm speaking into the microphone. Yes. I want to welcome I'm just going to talk like with my hand on the microphone. It will encourage me. I want to welcome everyone for coming. My name is Richard. This is the Los Angeles Visionaries Association Sunday Salon. This is our 50th some odd salon in the last 7 years. Thank you, Victor. God bless you. I want to thank Adele Yellen. Adele Yellen owns this market. Okay, Adele Yellen lets us do this here. God bless her. Grand Central Market turned 100 on Friday. So happy birthday, Grand Central. We have a lot of wonderful people so this is what's going to happen. We're going to talk here for about half an hour. I just want to get all of our speakers introduced and everyone see them and get some big ideas on the table. It's going to take me about 10 minutes to break down, and then we're going to walk up to Hill and Temple, where the Hall of Records is and the Hall of Justice is. Okay? Dion Neutra is with us today. Dion's father, Richard, designed the Hall of Records. We are going to talk about public art on and around the Hall of Records and the Hall of Justice. Clare, Haggarty, who I will introduce in a minute, is Deputy Director of Collections of the Los Angeles County Arts Commission. And you are going to be talking about Allison Sarr's Embodied, which is a sculpture in front of the Hall of Justice. And we're also going to be talking about Topographic Map, which is a Joseph Young piece. And I am delighted that Joseph Young's two daughters, Leslie and Cecily, are right there. And they're going to, okay, so we just have a lot to do. Okay, so very quickly, quite shamelessly, I would like to remind everyone that Kim and I give bus tours. That's our logo. Next slide. We give bus tours, and Lava does lots of things. It's gonna, Kim, no, just go back, stop. It's gonna load. It's gonna load. Lava does many things, and one of them is, why isn't it loading?
It's very strange, isn't it? Gremlins. Saw them at the bottom.
Another thing Lava does is we have quarterly forensic science seminars at the Teaching Crime Lab at Cal State L.A., which is part of the Harrisburg Davis Forensic Science Center, which is run by the California Department of Justice, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the LAPD. They are quarterly events. They're totally awesome. Next weekend, in 7 days, we're doing an event. It's called SLA to DNA. We are going to do a forensic breakdown of the Symbionese Liberation Army shootout with the LAPD on May 17th, 1974 on West 54th Street. We're going to have our author, Brad Schreiber, who's written a book about this talk. He's going to do the talk jointly with retired Detective Mike Digby of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. It is everything you ever wanted to know about the most famous shootout in Los Angeles history next week. We're also going to do a cold case presentation by Beverly Kerr, who's a senior forensics analyst in the Sheriff's Department. This is a cold case that the murder occurred 25 years ago, and she was assigned to the case 2 years ago, and she pulled DNA. They got a match, and the case was adjudicated last week, and sentencing happens tomorrow. So it's very, very interesting. It's a fundraiser for the Cal State LA Criminalistics Department. Next slide. Very quickly. Shamelessly, my birthday bus is next month. Okay, shameless. I'll be 49 years old. It's a 7-hour bus tour. Architect and historian Alan Hess is getting on the bus. We are going to go in search of Imperial, California. And by Imperial, California, I mean the type of architecture, the corporate architecture that was created in the 1960s by architects like William Ferreira and Welton Beckett that helped define what California is. 7 hours is awesome. Next slide, Dan. Okay, very quickly, this is where we're going. This doesn't exist anymore. This is the old courthouse at Broadway and Temple. This photo was taken about 1920. Okay, this doesn't exist anymore. Next slide. This is a photo taken about 10 years later. The building you just saw is in the middle. The building on the left is the old Hall of Records, 1911, Cuthbert and Eisen. And the building on the far right is the Hall of Justice, 1924. That's where we'll be going. Next slide, Kim. Okay, this is a photo of the Richard Neutra Hall of Records, 1958. This is built approximately on the site of the old Hall of Records. By the way, if you're a careful watcher of the Rockford Files, the Hall of Records, right before it was torn down in 1979, does appear as coverage in the Rockford Files occasionally. Yeah. Okay, so there are two arrows on the screen. The left one points to the George Washington statue. The right arrow points to Malcolm Leland's ceramic screen. This is a topic of one of the pieces of art we'll be talking about today. The building is Richard Neutra, 1958. Kim, next slide. This is a photo of, just leave it, Kim, it'll come on. Dion, come on up. It's a photograph of you and your dad, so just come on up and I want everyone to welcome Dion Neutra.
Thank you. You know, I have to start by telling you a little story. I'm the oldest living resident of Silver Lake. Nobody's lived there longer than me. So you're looking at an icon. I moved in 1932 and my dad started the research house on the shores of Silver Lake. And my mother and I used to go once a week and catch the red car down at the corner of Glendale and Fargo. We'd take the red car to the subway terminal building across the street and walk over to the Central Market and do our weekly shopping with shopping bags. We carried a bag every week, and that was a ritual we went through. So coming back to this market is really, you know, nostalgia for me.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. What can you show?
It's coming up.
Anyway,
Dion, why don't you tell us, because we're going to focus on the Hall of Records,
right.
Why don't you talk about this important commission for your father, and I'll get the photo back up on the screen.
Yeah. Let me just say that one Sunday we woke up and somebody called us on the phone and said, "Have you seen the Sunday Times?" No, we hadn't seen it. Get the Sunday Times. So got the Sunday Times out, and we see an article that says, "Architects chosen to design the new Hall of Records." That was the first we even heard about it. And second of all, when we listed the names of the architect, there were 4 architects besides our firm listed. We didn't even know the other 3 firms. So the deal is this: in those days, everybody courted their county commissioner, right? John Anson Ford was the commissioner that we courted at that time. The other people had their own people. So everybody, when a major commission like that came up, each of the districts got the chance to vote for their architect to do this thing. So in the wisdom of the county, they assigned 4 architects to the same commission. But they never thought to think about how these people are going to work together. So you can imagine, we have a meeting, everybody's sitting around the table, and we're trying to decide now who's going to be the design lead in this project. And I remember there was a spirited discussion about this. My dad said, you know, I'm the oldest one, so I think you ought to let me do it. Anyway, the final decision was, okay, Neutra and Alexander would be the lead design architects. Herman Charles Light would be the specification writer. Arnold and Rex would be, I forgot exactly what their role was going to be. And then a third person, whose name I can't think of right now, was going to be supervise the construction of the building. Turns out that this fourth guy actually passed away right in the very early part of the project. So we only had 3 architects surviving to do the work. My dad decided that this was a really important opportunity for him to be able to do something so important, such an important building, right in his hometown, Civic Center. He's really going to go all out for it. So the very first thing that happened was the county said, hey, your model for this building is the Hall of Administration over here. We want this building to blend with that building. Well, if you look at that building, you know, no way we're going to emulate that, right? So immediately from day one, my dad is on a collision course with the county people who are supervising this. It was a very long, arduous process. At one point, for example, he introduced the ideas of these louvers in the front of the building on the side. That was $1 million installation, and everybody was saying, are you crazy? And then he had to prove that it would save, you know, air conditioning costs and everything like that. At another point in the development, the question of how we're going to spend our 5% art project came up. And so, so that was taken in the late 60s with myself and my father and a group of the media house. So that's a nice photo. Anyway, I was involved in the planning of this thing, and I remember the discussion. I thought that it came up that it was decided rather than spend 5% of the art subject budget for a piece of sculpture standing out on the patio, how about integrating the art into the building? And so that gave rise to talking to Malcolm Leland and Joseph Young. Malcolm designed that screen that you saw on the other slide.
Right, this screen right here.
That screen right there.
Right there.
And also there's another screen out in the front on the other side of the street facing Temple Street. I don't know if we're going to get on that side.
Yes.
That's another piece of Leland design. Plus, he came up with the design for a bronze drinking fountain. We got with the Hall's Drinking Fountain Company, and we designed a custom-made bronze fountain just for this building. And they then made it a standard fountain, which they then sold later. Since then, I think they've all been changed out. I was hoping maybe they might have saved one of them at least in the basement or something. They've all been changed out to refrigerated model, very ugly looking.
We're going to work on that.
We're not going to worry about that. Okay.
We're going to work on it. We're going to work on it.
Yeah, I might say parenthetically that we also use one of these fountains in our project in Gettysburg. We did a visitor center in Gettysburg. And I just recently saw a slide where this fountain was installed at the foot of the ramp going up to the roof. That building has since been demolished. And I realized, to my sadness, that we forgot to save that damn fountain. It would have been a chance to go in there and unhook that fountain and get it out of there before it could plow it under. We missed it.
We're going to talk about that.
We'll talk about that. Anyway, so the final story after working for 4 years on this project, I remember going into a meeting and there were the 3 architects sitting together around the table. And somebody said, gentlemen, I'm very sorry to have to tell you, but we're all going to have to kick in $5,000 into the pot because we're running short to pay off the final expenses of this project. So not only did my dad work for nothing for 5 years, but he had to kick in another $5,000 at the end for the privilege of working on this project. In my book, The Neutras Then and Later, I have a spread on this building. It's called The Neutras Then and Later. Get it on Amazon. One of the things I decry is that this gorgeous installation of louvers has not been maintained properly. They're supposed to turn automatically with the movement of the sun and close when the sun goes behind a cloud. It's supposed to open. It's very sophisticated, but actually a simple system. And to my knowledge, it's not working.
We're going to work on that.
You're working on it.
Okay, you got to sit down. You got to go.
Okay, have a seat.
Careful. Perfect.
Excellent. Cecily, Leslie, one of you. Either one. Who's going first? Claire's going last. Which one? Both or one of the young sisters is coming? Okay. Cecily, you're going to come up first?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Leslie, great. Okay, there we go. Okay, come on over here, Cecily. Okay. Hold this up.
Hello.
Okay. Who's on the screen?
That is my father, Joseph Young. I'm Cecily Young, daughter of the artist of one or two of the pieces you'll see today. And I figured this is my chance to tell a little bit about my father, maybe give a little bit of information out to those who don't know him and know his history as a Los Angeles artist. So I hope you don't mind if I do a little reading because there's information. So my father called his studio art in architecture. And his works ranged from mosaic murals and bas-reliefs to bronze sculpture and stained glass. And he even did all-encompassing architectural design down to the doorknobs, the colors, and the lighting. He believed that art and architecture are equal partners in elevating the human experience. He came to Los Angeles in 1951, and the city was unlike anything he had ever known. He had grown up in a small steel town near Pittsburgh, a steel city that was literally choking on its own success. It was dingy and dirty and cramped. And here in Los Angeles, he found lightness and openness and all the possibilities of open space and freedom. In Los Angeles of 1951, there was room for new energy and ideas. Modernism was flourishing. There was a growing need for new civic buildings, which coincided happily with new ideas in architecture and design, as exemplified by the Neutra family. My father was part of a tide of idealistic young artists who arrived in Los Angeles to participate in this wave of energy and optimism of the mid-century. So there are 3 artworks of his many public commissions that we might talk about today, or you might see. Well, you won't see the Parker Center one, but I'm going to mention it because it's topical. Because it's...
Wait, I have a photo of Parker Center because we're not going there.
That's good. So,
That's your mom. You're at the top.
that's me. I think I was about 3. So this mural went up before I was born, but it was always a point of pride to go there and bring people there. In this Parker Center mural, you can see the skyline, or an abstraction of the skyline of Los Angeles of the day. But if you look deeper, you can see that my father conceived of the mural not just as snapshots of the Los Angeles skyline, but also evoking the spirit of possibility that Los Angeles represented. All the space that floats between each iconographic image speaks of the in-between spaces of Los Angeles of 1955, waiting for their opportunity to become part of the city. This mural is currently planned to be removed and relocated by the city of Los Angeles to a new location because Parker Center is going to be demolished. Unfortunately, we are getting conflicting statements on where it will go. We've heard one thing from the Department of Cultural Affairs, and yet just yesterday or even today, the news says something else in the LA Times.
We're going to work on that.
We're gonna topographical map. Do you have a picture of that one? Okay, well Clare will take us to the topographical map. And I want to just say thank you to the County of Los Angeles, who has been so supportive of my father's artwork and really have taken care of it. And then finally, you might all be aware of the Triforium, which stands catty-corner to City Hall. And this Triforium was a forward-thinking exploration of art and technology, which started really merely as a theme tower for the new Los Angeles Mall. But of course my father expanded that program, and he wanted it really to be a symbol for the city of Los Angeles. He predicted it would eventually become known as the Rosetta Stone of art and technology, and called it the world's first polyphenoptic tower. He also said the Triforium was a tribute to the unfinished kaleidoscopic nature of Los Angeles. In the original concept, my father intended the sculpture to project laser beams into space, which would have made it the world's first astronomical beacon. But budgetary restrictions curtailed this design element, and also because no one really knew how to do it.
Are we going to work on that?
And that was kind of typical of what was going on with the Triforium. He was trying to do something technologically that no one really knew how to do. Today we know how to do and achieve what his vision was, but at that time it was like cutting edge and no one was sure, and there was no Steve Jobs and there was no Apple, and you didn't have an iPhone. Well, anyway, the most important aspect of the Triforium was that it could take music and through its sort of a primordial computer, translate music into light on the colored prisms of the tower. He had always hoped it would be a meeting place and a landmark in a vibrant downtown urban scene, but he had always hoped that it would be a landmark in a vibrant urban scene, but somehow that urban scene never materialized around it. So now, 40 plus years later, the Triforium Project, a volunteer group of young, creative people, and I want to thank them, has come together and raised money for its restoration, and truly want to see my father's original vision become realized. We are waiting to see how the city intends to redevelop this block. It's part of their master plan, but there's no specific plan for that block yet. And we are, of course, concerned that future developments might find that the Triforium is inconvenient in some way, or stands in the way of some building footprint that we put there. So stay tuned on this one as well. Finally, here we are in the 21st century, and we're 50 plus years after that era of optimism and growth. The buildings that once were exciting emblems of progress and civil society are now too small to take on the functions of today. And in the case of the Parker Center, they have taken on a negative and even destructive history. So all across the city, civic buildings are being torn down and rebuilt. Many of my father's artworks, which were in those civic buildings, were made of mosaics, which could last for hundreds, even thousands of years. But ironically, the buildings which house them are considered disposable, and this is what threatens his legacy. My sister and I are now realizing the scope of the effort needed to advocate for my father's legacy, and needless to say, it's a complicated task we're beginning to embark upon. I just want to read off a really brief list of artworks that you might know around the city of Los Angeles. So there's the Parker Center mural in the Parker Center from 1956, the Topographic Map of the Los Angeles water system, which is on the County Records Building from 1962. The History of Mathematics at UCLA is on the side of the Math Science Building, that was 1968. He did the Triforium on the Los Angeles Mall in 1975, and he did the Holocaust Monument in Pan Pacific Park in 1992, around which the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust was built in 2010. So there are many more commissions around Los Angeles, but these are perhaps the most public. And thank you all for listening.
Leslie, do you want to come up just for a second, say hi? Just come up for a second and say hi. No, we're going to be talking a lot on site.
Okay.
But I just want everyone, when we're out in the field, it'll be better than we just see you for a second. And then Claire, we're going to get you up here and we'll just quickly I'm going to raise this for you. Just say hi.
Hi, my name is Leslie Young. I am the other daughter of Joseph Young, and thank you all for coming and being interested in my father's work.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, Claire, come on up here and let's bring this one home. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm Clare Haggarty. I work for the County of Los Angeles. So some of these works, the works that we're going to see today fall in the collection that I manage. But I'm also a huge fan of everything that Joseph Young does, including the Triforium. So if you're not aware of this t-shirt of landmarks around the world, the landmark for Los Angeles is the Triforium. That one is under the management of my colleagues over at the city. But I am, as I said, a huge fan. So the County of Los Angeles adopted a civic art policy back at the end of 2004, and that was when we, the Board of Supervisors, decided to set aside 1% of all design and construction projects for new county buildings that are over $500,000 to a special civic art fund, which usually results in a civic artwork at that site, whether it's integrated into the architecture or if it's an artwork that is site-specific on that site. And I started the Arts Commission about 6 years ago. But prior to the civic art policy being put in place, the county had been around for over 150 years, and various county departments and the Board of Supervisors had been commissioning artworks, during that time period. So the Arts Commission also inherited a number of historic works, many of which we're doing conservation on now, which is pretty exciting. So I've learned a lot about the history of Los Angeles through our art collection. We're going to be looking at Alison Sarr's piece, which is actually a contemporary piece that was finished in 2015 for the new Hall of Justice. And my job is also to make sure when we build new artworks that they're going to be durable, they're going to stand the test of time, they're going to last a minimum of 25 years, and they're going to be relatively low maintenance so that we don't have to do too much conservation. So I'll introduce you to that piece. Some fun facts, I'm going to read them off my list. So this piece that we're going to see by Alison Sarr for the Hall of Justice is 12 feet tall and 6 feet in diameter and weighs over a ton. But it started off as a 12-inch maquette that was then enlarged 10 times to the size it is now. It was then, once it was enlarged, carved out of 500 cubic feet of foam and covered in nearly 100 pounds of clay and hand modeled and then stamped with words on it. And I don't know, ask people to bring rice paper. Okay, if you brought rice paper, I have charcoal with me and we can do rubbings on her skirt. But the artist incorporated 200 words on her skirt. She asked staff in the building and then also members of the public what the word justice means to them and incorporated these words into the skirt. And there's over 12 languages represented in her skirt. So back to the process. The clay model, 12 feet high now, the foam covered clay, was cut up into 35 parts. And then they molded fiberglass and silicone rubber over them and then filled those up with ceramic, fired those to make these ceramic shells, which were the various parts of the form, which is a woman, Lady Justice. And these wax parts were then molten bronze heated to a mere 2,040 degrees is poured into each of these shells, and then there's 35 bronze parts that are all welded together to make the 12-foot statue. When we're out there, you'll notice it's 12 feet tall, which is pretty tall, but it was an intentional height that she created it so that it was commanding of your attention, but not too gigantic so that the human can still relate to it. So that's all I'm going to say about that piece for now, because we'll talk more about it when we go out there.
And the Malcolm Leland.
We're also going to talk about Malcolm Leland's ceramic screen on the Hall of Records. Malcolm Leland, I understood, actually was encouraged Neutra to integrate the art with the architecture, and because he had seen Oscar Niemeyer's designs for Brasilia, which was being built at the same time as the Hall of Records in the late 50s, early 60s. And modernism had got to this point to being very sleek, and art had been kind of, art flourishes have been taken out of architecture, but this was a way to kind of reintegrate art with architecture still in this very kind of sleek, modern way. And he was, as I said, very much inspired by the designs from Brasilia. I think you'll see that when we go out there. Okay, good.
Good, okay. Okay, we're going to make this happen. I'm going to break down the AV. Everyone should run to the bathroom if they need to. We're going to leave in 10 minutes. We're going to walk up to the Hall of Records. We're going to meet Donna Williams first. She's the conservator who is conserving the Joseph Young piece, Topographic Map. And we're going to meet Donna's going to talk first because she's a little under the weather. And then we're going to walk around the corner. Well, we're going to let Dion tell us where we're going to go, because there are several places to talk about the Hall of Records. And then we're going to walk across. Yes. And then we're going to walk across the street to the Hall of Justice.
You're going to notice on the topographical map that it's got some water staining on it, and we're working on removing that. And it's something that we've been trying to do for a while now, but it takes a conservator specialized training to do this kind of work. You can't just, power wash it as much as artists do. Anyway, forgive us for not having it cleaned in time for this tour. We were going to do it this week, but then the temperatures were in the hundreds, and that wasn't, good working environment for our poor conservator. So she's going to be cleaning it next week, but she's going to show us a little bit about her process for spot cleaning and talk about how she goes about doing that work.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So thank you. Dion, thank you for being here. Leslie, Cecily, thank you for being here. It's 2:40, so at 2:50, let's just come back and we're going to walk up Hill Street. Okay, and Marcos, you're going to drive Dion, so let's get you guys going. All right, let's go.
Hello, darling. I love you.
All right, we did it. Why doesn't everyone start? I think we're going to focus. This should be the middle of the group. Okay, I'm not your mother, but I think if we're going to. Okay, I don't care. All right, Donna, front and center. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, Donna. We're gonna have you talk first, because I know you have to go. Okay, Dion, if we could get your patience for just a couple of minutes. Donna has to be somewhere, so we're gonna knock this one out of the park real quick. And then I want you and Claire, Dion, you and Claire, figure out where you're gonna go right now, because you know all about what Donna says, and you were here. So you two go figure out where we're gonna go next, because I want Dion to be very happy with our next vista. So you two figure that out right now. I know you're gonna talk about this too, but just go talk to Claire right now about where we're gonna go next. All right, Donna, you are so Claire and her department has contracted you to conserve Joseph Young's Topographic Map. The date on this is 1963. Okay, 62. This building, the Hall of Records, is 61. 63. This building is 63, Dion?
We always say 62.
62, okay. 62, 60.
Date,
okay.
Makes sense.
Perfect, okay. So, by the way, have you met Dion Neutra?
I just did.
Okay, good. All right, so Donna, go.
Okay, well, I'm going to give a shout out to the daughters, Leslie and Cecily.
Oh, they haven't even started. Yeah, they haven't even started.
Nice to meet you. So I...
Sucking on the thing.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I have been contracted to clean the mosaic component of the wall. I did some work on the wall back in 2005, I believe, that required a little more work than what we have now. Basically, what we are doing is figuring out various chelating solutions to safely remove the mineral deposits from all of the surfaces. The polished granite is admittedly easier than these rough cut surfaces and the tessera, because it's a little harder. You really do have to soften the deposits in order to get them off, as opposed to any kind of relying on mechanical action. Otherwise, you're going to abrade the glass and stone tessera and scratch any polished surface. And we also don't want to remove any grouch. There is some question, and the sisters may have more information about this regarding the original fountain component. What we have right now are some modifications in terms of little copper stems that are coming out from the historic fountain element to direct the water into the troughs. That is not correct. That was a decision that was made in conjunction with the County Arts Commission back in 2005 because they wanted to keep the water on, but they were trying to limit it to the actual pathways. I don't believe that's correct, but there's bound to be some documentation somewhere that would suggest how that water was supposed to exit into the basin. So we will remove those so that we don't have any complications about historic authenticity. The water is going to be turned off. As I understand it, that's still correct, Claire? The water is being turned off? Okay. So theoretically, there's not going to be this problem again. I mean, because the water is moving the way it is, it's allowing moisture to dry on the stone surface, and that's where you get the deposits. If you note, anywhere where the water has a chance to just flow down the surface, you don't have any deposits because the water is acting as a very nice solvent to just brush that material away. So until to my mind, there's some suggestion that that there may be a problem with water in the wall itself and the plumbing itself, because you see water in areas theoretically where you shouldn't see water if you're just looking at where the water's exiting. And that is that could be a long-term problem and a much bigger fix. So it really does make sense to, in terms of a preservation, to cut the water for now until the county has time to really assess the plumbing component of the artwork and address what should be done with that. Water is very invasive, and it can cause a lot of problems to any substrate materials if it's wetting from the back or from inside and then percolating outwards. But all in all, our job, while at times it can be a little frustrating, is fairly simple and straightforward because the mosaic is actually in really good condition. I mean, I don't see any structural problems. We don't have any problems with the tessera, really. We just have a problem with how the water is circulating over the surface.
Question?
Yes.
What? Go. Does this represent something? Is this the LA River?
The question is, what does this represent? Claire, go.
This is a bird's eye view of the county, and so the different colors represent the different geologic forms, mountains, water, grassland throughout the county of Los Angeles. Cecily, do you have anything to add to that? And the water systems. This was the county hall of records. It's actually not all the county's records are now actually in Norwalk, and this is mostly a building housing the planning department and the district attorney's office. So it's not the hall of records really any longer.
Perfect. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I know. Are there any other questions explicitly for Donna? Because I want to move over to Dion and the Young sisters. Donna, do you want to? Is there anything else you want to? What's? How long? I'm not going to ask you that. It's going to take. How long will the water be? Yeah. How long will the water be turned off? That's the clip. Okay. Okay, so you're gonna figure that out. It's a good question that you're gonna answer, and we'll send out to the newsletter. Yes.
When you are looking at these mosaics to restore, are there differences in the mosaics we have on the West Coast versus the East Coast? Are there differences in the sources of the material? Do you know where they came from, and does that influence what you do?
Okay, so the question is there a difference between mosaic, how you make mosaics on the West Coast rather than the East Coast, with the climate? It's a question of is the climate impact how you make the mosaics, and where did Joseph Young get his collection of tesserae, of materials for his tesserae? So it's a two-part.
It could be Mexico, it could be Italy. I mean,
right. So,
it be America.
Donna, why don't you answer the first question as best you can, which is there a difference between making mosaic on the West Coast where the climate's better and the East Coast, and is there a difference in restoring it?
I would say that there is not. What I would say is that in terms of time period, artists on both the West Coast and the East Coast, many of them were drawing from the same sources. Most of which you only see a small use of the gilded tessera, the gold-colored tessera.
Oh, the gold tessera.
Yes, that is Italian. There are currently manufacturers who are making tessera. It's extremely expensive, but it is the only way you're actually going to match that surface. You cannot do it with other tiles made locally, or do any kind of sophisticated glazing. You won't get the effect. So really, there was a shared material source for many artists at the time period.
Right, good question, good answer. All right, Dion, go.
For what it's worth, my understanding of this mosaic map was that the intention was to show the course of water traveling through the county of Los Angeles. So on that basis, I could say, if you were to limit the flow of the water to the primary passages and avoid the water running over the faces like you see here, that actually would be an option you might want to consider. I mean, I could see it running over, leaving all those stains. So if there was a way to direct it down through those channels, maybe it may be easier to maintain over time. I might say something else while we're on this side of the building. Malcolm Leland designed a screen that was supposed to be a freestanding screen standing over in that area over there in the corner. I noticed that they moved it over and put it right in front of the building. County, where are you? I mean, I don't get the theory. Maybe they felt it was vulnerable standing free by itself or something like that. But it was never intended to be plastered against the face of the building and blocking the view from the lower windows. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
When we get home, we'll be over there, so we'll talk about that more when we're there.
Right. And of course, I'm very upset to think that the water has to be shut down, because that's one of my banes of my existence. I design buildings with water elements, and then they end up shutting them down for whatever reason. So I hope it doesn't have to be for too long. The other thing I would like to say, and while the county is listening, is since it's no longer the Hall of Records, is there a chance of taking those ugly signs down that were obviously not designed by the architects? Terrible! That's awful. Pasting a sign like that on the face of a building? Come on, give me a break.
Will you volunteer to make a better sign?
Well, no, take the sign off. You can call it the Hall of Records without a sign. Or at least use the aluminum letters that we designed, that are Neutra letters. That would make a little more sense.
What else about this feature? Because we're gonna get the sisters to talk here, and then we'll walk around to the sun.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was, by the way, this is backed up to an auditorium in the inside of the building, which was beautifully designed by us. And if you look at it today, it's a shambles. And the entire interior of the building has been gutted, changed, messed around with. It's a tragedy because we had beautiful, beautiful lobbies, beautiful design. Malcolm Leland bronze drinking fountains throughout the building, now changed to ugly, stock, cooled, automatically cooled fountains looking terrible. Just an example of, lack of sensitivity, maintaining really a piece of art. This is a piece of art you're looking at here.
Okay, good. All right,
And all right, so we have questions. Go.
Quick question. Are the up and down components a part of the whole design? Was this whole rounded wall the original design? Because it all integrates so beautifully.
Right, so the question is the architecture of this wall that the topographic map is placed on, was that part of the design, Dion, of the entire building which your father conceived of?
Yeah, absolutely. That we tried to think of an interesting background for this particular mural, knowing that we're going to use what I'm thinking of? Granite. Yeah, the granite slabs and everything. So it's all supposed to be integrated and be, sympathetic to each other, and I think it worked out beautifully, I believe.
Yeah, totally.
A real tribute to Joseph Young.
okay, why don't we get Cecily, Leslie?
Great, Dion. So we're gonna have the Young sisters talk for a minute, and then we're gonna go over on the other side, and we'll talk about the louvers and the Leland screen over there. Okay. Yeah.
That's fine.
Perfect. All right. So Leslie and/or Cecily, come on up. Okay. Here's Leslie. Where's Cecily? Okay. So yeah. So what do you think?
What I think from what I can tell, as I recollect this work, the water did stream down from all the different places above it. You see where it's dried. That's what it looked like originally, and unfortunately you see that it's spilling into places that it should never have spilled. Now that's what it's doing. And just to amplify on what Claire was saying, and to make that clear, all of the mosaic was Italian. My father never used any other source other than Italian mosaic. Smalti, he worked also with glass manufacturers in Murano. So I don't know to what extent there was an active mosaic making business in countries like Mexico, which is happened now, or Asia, but certainly those markets were not where he did business with.
Actually, I'd like to comment on that. I think there might be a couple of Mexican in the lining of the pool, but he really didn't like the quality that he was getting from Mexican glass tiles. And remember, this was 1962. I am not going to disparage today's Mexican glass tiles, but at that time I remember him saying they don't make it the way I want it. So that's something that for an area where you're not going to be looking directly at it very much, he would allow that could be done in a cheaper material.
So, you and your sister and Kim and I have spent no small amount of time on the subject of gold tesserae. Do you want to
make an announcement?
Yeah.
Make that?
Okay. About Bethlehem?
Yeah, about Bethlehem.
There is currently, unfortunately, we found that it's 50 years out from when our father created a lot of these projects, and this seems to be D-Day for some of them. There is a commission he did in Anaheim, Temple Beth Emet, which has been in existence, again, for over 5 decades, but now, unfortunately, because the population's aged out and they couldn't afford to keep it running, they are having to close down their synagogue. They're moving to another smaller site. They sold the building to a church, and our father had done a number of works in that site, including stained glass windows, which are going to remain. But there is a wall behind a Torah ark. If any of you are familiar with what a Torah ark is, it's housing for Torahs, Hebrew scrolls, and this is a beautiful piece of mid-century modern furniture design, for lack of a better way to put it. It is an ark made of walnut that is about 18 feet high, including spires, and it's quite beautiful. And there is a semicircular surround behind it that is almost entirely, not entirely, in gold, 24-karat gold leaf tessera. And what do we figure that is? It's about 18 feet high and about 7 or 8 feet wide. Yeah, in a crescent shape. So in today's dollars, I can only tell you, I don't know what it cost then, but gold tessera by the pound now is about $125 a pound. So we're looking at many, many thousands of dollars in that material cost alone, and we have to figure out what to do with this installation.
I'd just like to add that one of the problems that we face is that, you know, when you're looking for someone to take this artwork, take it and use it, it needs a new home. The Torah arc is great, it's portable, it can be moved, it's like a piece of furniture. But that what we're talking about here is looking for someone who's interested in gold mosaic, but they would have to remove it off the substrate. And if there's anyone out there who knows someone who has a mosaic background and is able to do that, that might be something, you know, valuable, because this is real Italian gold mosaic from 1960, early 60 something. So it's historic and it's real.
Perfect.
I mean, we could talk about that particular detail further, because what might be nice is for you to have that, or an archive to have that material for future repairs.
Yeah.
And so I'd be happy to talk with you about doing that.
Good.
We're talking probably about maybe 150 square feet of
Well, yes.
And yeah, but in any event, in today's dollars, it's very, very valuable.
Right.
Well, we can talk about that later.
Yes,
Yeah,
some other time.
but I'd be happy to talk about it.
Good. Solving problems. Solving problems. That's okay. Solving problems. A potential candidate is restoration on the May Company facade. I'm not joking. People are talking to the Academy. Yes. So Claire, let's wrap this up, and we'll move to another location. So Claire, you're responsible for all of this. You got the money to do this. So how does it feel?
Well, let's wait until the end of next week before we clap. It's been a long time coming. You know, sometimes these projects, you know, we're dealing with public money, so we got to use it properly and make sure we're doing it the right way. And sometimes it can take years to get things cleaned, and drives me a little crazy. But I'm glad that we're doing it. I want to say also that we have another piece in our collection by Joseph Young at the Leland Weaver Library in Southgate. That's a cast concrete piece that Donna also did some work on for us a few years ago. So we've got two Joseph Youngs, and then, as you know, the city has one in their collection just down the street, Triforium. If you have time after this, I highly recommend you go check it out if you haven't seen it before. So,
Good. Okay, good. I want to. So, did we decide where we're going to go? We're going to go around? Okay. All right. We're going to leave. Just before we leave, I want everyone to look down the hill. Leslie and Cecily, we're going to come back to this, but at the bottom of this hill are two installations by your dad, one of which is in dire peril. Parker Center at First in Los Angeles. It's the mosaic just under in the exterior courtyard. It's in the atrium. It's in the lobby, which is this interesting interior-exterior confusion. That's First in Los Angeles. The Triforium is at Temple in Los Angeles, at the Los Angeles Mall, just across from City Hall. And the Triforium is okay, but it's an interesting challenge. And I think at the very end we'll talk about that. But just as you look, that's where the Triforium is, to the left, and Parker Center is just to the right. And Parker Center is going to be torn down in the next 4 months. So Claire, let's lead the way. And Dion, do you need more water?
Yeah.
I'll get you some more water, and let's follow Claire.
Let's have a little look at the fountain. I think everyone should look.
Let me get you some more water. Feedback. So, Dion, okay, so why don't you just start talking?
Let's try. Does this work? Can you hear me okay?
Okay, because the PA has to stay here or there'll be feedback.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay? All right, you're good? Do you need more water?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all right, so Dion,
Yeah.
what do you want us first to notice about this courtyard we're in?
Yeah, but one of the things that I'm completely mysterious about is this huge expanse of paving, which seems to be for no purpose that I can see, unless we have a large group like this. I don't know what that's supposed to be for. I can't remember what the original design was for this area. But anyway, while we're here, we see the screen that been pointed out to you. That's the other piece that Malcolm Leland designed. And what it does is it conceals some openings for air conditioning return, I believe it is, which are sort of randomly placed there. And so by putting a screen, it integrates the entire wall area, and you're not picking up those individual openings. The other feature, which is really important, is these louvers that you see on the left. This is the first use of this scale of louver, which was automated by a system on the roof of the building, such that they were to rotate automatically according to the sun exposure, to remain open as much as possible, but yet not allow direct sun to come into the offices inside. The other thing that happens is when there's a cloud, when it goes over, a cloud comes over, or it gets dark, the louvers open automatically. About 4 or 5 years ago now, I arranged for a tour to go through this building with representatives of the county, and they were telling me that these louvers have not moved for many, many years. I said, why not? Well, the people who installed them originally went broke, and we don't know how to reactivate the system. And I said, well, that doesn't sound very imaginative. I bet there's somebody out there that could solve this problem. And I still feel the same way. I think it's a scandal that this very expensive system has been allowed to calcify and freeze in position, which means that the people inside, don't really get a clear shot of view from the outside at any time. It's just looking at the back of louvers. That's terrible. The other element of it that my father was so intrigued with was this is like a moving facade. Every time you go by the building, it would look different. And that's such an unusual concept. What building around the city is designed with that idea in mind, that you actually see something changing, if not right then when you're watching, at least every time you drive by it looks a little different. So I thought that was a fascinating feature of it. The other thing I'd like to point out is that, first of all, this is no longer the Hall of Records, so therefore let's take those ugly signs down. That would be a really good step in the right direction. The other thing is that we had wonderful designs for the interior of this building, the lobbies and everything, and that has all been allowed to degrade terribly, and it looks really horrible. So in a way, this is an example of stewards who have not really understood the importance of a building, a piece of art in their midst, to really take care of it and maintain it in a good way. So another thing that I might also mention during that tour, I wanted to be taken inside that area there. You see the big block there? It's completely solid. That's where the records were stored. Records don't need windows. So what we did was we had 2 floors of records for every floor of the building itself. That means that the record floors are only about 9 feet high, because you can't reach very high to take a heavy record book off of a built-in storage unit anyway, so why waste all that space? So we were very proud of that solution. But now that the records have been moved away, I was really afraid that the building might be at risk, because this is a huge piece of real estate. What are we using it for? So I go in there, and believe it or not, they've remodeled the inside of that block for usable office space. People are working inside that, cut off from nature, in a dark interior with substandard ceiling heights, and they're working in there. The only good part about it is they are making use of it, and that maybe protects the building from being torn down. But, somebody said, can you add windows to the outside? Well, no, you can't do that. So we're stuck. The only thing I can think of, this would be really a wonderful technological feat, would be somehow to project a view of what it would look like outside on the inside of the wall by some kind of laser technology. So when you're working in there, you feel like you're looking out through the glass. Wouldn't that be a trick? That'd be a nice challenge for somebody to figure out. Anyway, I'm sorry we can't get inside, because the lobbies are really beautiful and are interesting, and a commentary on the maintenance of the building. Anybody have any questions? Well, I mean, something like that, some kind of technique like that would be really interesting. I've proposed that in some other designs where you have a very deep a floor plate, and the people sitting far away from the windows are deprived from feeling in contact with the outside. So by using this technology, you can get the illusion of that, and that's certainly better than nothing. It'd be well worth it.
Were the louvers driven off of a light sensor system?
Yeah, there's a light sensor system on the roof that would respond to the sun condition. And then there was a program that Limlar louvers, who made these big louvers, came up with this program which automatically would cycle the louvers every 6 minutes to the next position. So they kept moving all the time, all the way through the daytime. At night, they'd reset automatically to the next day, and so it would be repeating every day. And that was adjusted to the seasons as well. Very sophisticated for the time, in the 60s.
I have a question. Okay, the farther down you go, there's more weight. Are the hinges bigger?
The way it was solved was every floor, you see where those joints are?
Yeah.
There's a support to the building, so that the accumulated weight was not transmitted down. It was picked up at each support system. That's how that was solved. By the way, on the other side of the building, we also have these louvers, and in my tour, I went to looked at the bottom where the louvers come down, and I took a photograph of the motor that drives those, and looked all rusty and cruddy and looking terrible, hadn't been used for years. And also at the bottom of the louvers, things had rusted out, and there was accumulation of dirt and mess around there. If you buy my book, The Neutras Then and Later, we have a spread on this building, and photographs of that condition are in that book. So again, it's a question of resolve. You know, if they had a few $1,000s that they could spend, I would like to see them spend it on getting these louvers back in shape again. I think it could be done. So, good luck. Yeah.
Question. Was Neutra the first one Neutra was the one that started using these movers first, or were there other architects that used it prior?
Pretty much the beginning. It all started with the Neutra Desert House for Edgar Kaufman in Palm Springs, where he wanted to have some louvers. So he designed custom louvers for that purpose. And that started the people thinking about this, and Limlar Louver Company was founded, and they started making these as stock louvers, and these are part of their project. There may have been some South American architects who may have been working with louvers as well, but I think my dad was really the first one to pioneer with them in the United States, North America. Anyway, it was great to have you all come and appreciate the building. It's nice for me to come back and visit it again. And as far as the county is concerned, I'm here, I'm available. I would love to consult, about if ever get a budget together to fix some other things besides the fountain. I would love you guys.
How would you feel if those movers were replaced by solar?
Well, the question is, how would I feel if these were replaced by solar panels? Well, first of all, solar panels are not at all the same animal. It's a completely different idea. But you're saying, could they be built out of solar panels so to maybe absorb heat and create an interesting thought. Actually, it'd be an interesting thought. Good luck with that one.
Nice in the microphone for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's Claire?
I do.
Okay, Claire, you're standing in back of you is the Malcolm Leland screen. I know that Dion's talked about it, but do you, as someone who's in charge of that screen, want to talk about it?
Sure.
And I think if you stand where I am, because I don't want you to get feedback.
Oh, okay.
I know but this is a wonderful project. It just bounces.
Great. Well, and it's nice to be standing looking at the screen.
Yes.
So I didn't hear the first part, I'm afraid, but the process of making this is extruded ceramic process, and it was manufactured by McBean, which is the same company that did the terracotta walls at the Fort Moore Pioneer Memorial. So if you came on that tour a couple of months ago, Gladding McBean. And this was Malcolm Leland was a ceramicist, and this was his first large-scale architectural piece. But he also did the building on Wilshire, the ceramic, the cement, American cement building that you may have passed if you've gone down. I have a picture of it here, a small one. And he also did the clock tower in Pomona. And these were done around the same time, but this was the first one that he did. He also worked in much smaller scale, and some of his works are collected by LACMA and other museums. But as I said at the introduction, he was really looking at the sort of the integration of art and architecture that was happening in Brasilia. And a lot of times people don't know this is an artwork by an artist. It's also functional. It's covering the HVAC system. And Dan, I saw the piece you mentioned at the front that was moved. I don't know when that was moved. It must have been moved a really long time ago. But that's a good thing for me to look into and research. And one of the things I would like to do as the person that manages our collection is to really kind of draw people's attention to the fact that this is an artwork, and we've thought about putting up a plaque. It's in really good condition. It just needs to be cleaned at some point. But other than that, it's beautifully held up, and it really enhances the building. So I think that's all I have to say about this piece. I have a couple pictures here if you want to come and see it on the iPad. Should we move on to Hall of Justice?
Yes, okay, and we're going to swap out the PA when we get to the Hall of Justice, because this one is 9. We have the other one. Okay, so where are the Young sisters? Do we have anything to say here? Yes, Cecily. Yes, we all want to hear what you have to say.
This building is a work of art. Yes. I think everyone here must know. Dion, I just want you to know. He knows in his heart. It's a work of art, and anyone, you can see it walking by, and I sure hope I think the county with Clare understands what they have here. Oh my God. So that's all I can say.
And the one thing I want to add to this narrative is the Leland ceramic screen and this beautiful wall, which is integral to the building. These are both designed by Gladding McBean. Gladding McBean is this, I think, the one salient aspect of continuity in downtown architecture from the 1920s through the 1960s is architectural glazed terracotta produced by Gladding McBean. If you look at all of these beautiful buildings, City Hall, everything built by John Parkinson, Claude Bielman from the teens, by Neutra through the 60s, it's all Gladding McBean glazed architectural terracotta. Of course, the architectural styles change with the times, but this one company and their production of architectural terracotta per the designs of the architecture firms that define the city, that is the lingua franca. It's not a language, but it's the continuity of the material is really important, and I just think they're everywhere. Yes, Kim?
And what if you need to replace one of those pieces?
What?
What if you need to replace a piece?
Oh, yes, the best thing about having used Gladding McBean to build your building is every mold they've ever made, they have still in Lincoln, California, in Central California. So if the county had to replace one of these tiles,
We actually do have to replace a couple terracotta panels over at Fort Moore. So they have an incredible archive that Donna Williams, who's also working on that project, has had access to and researched within for that very project. So I agree. I concur.
Great. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to walk over, back over. We're going to go see the Allison Sarr statue embodied. Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna backtrack a bit. So Claire, do you want to lead the way, and I'll pack up the PA? Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
just to orient us, we started back in the basement right in Central Market. We started with a photograph of a Richardsonian Romanesque courthouse that sat on a knoll. That's where that courthouse sat. Okay? This granite wall across the street is in imitation of the original 1888 granite retaining wall that the original hall, the original courthouse sat on. And Gordon, am I not mistaken, is there not just across the street a cornerstone that says 1888? Right. That's right. I think everyone can see it. It's a cornerstone right there. It says 1888. That is the original cornerstone from the granite retaining wall that the original courthouse had. The original wall survived to like 1945, 46. It's really sad that it got torn down. All right, so Claire, here we are. We're at the Hall of Justice, which is a tremendous success story for the restoration and preservation of an historic structure. Hall of Justice, 1924. 1994, after the 1994 Northridge earthquake, this gets closed. Within 2 years, it gets badly damaged. It's within a year, it's closed. Initial estimates to restore this building were $40 million in 1996, 97. And the supervisor said, I don't know, I don't want to think about it for a while. $300 million to restore it. But they did it. Okay, it just opened last year. They got a lot of federal funding. So the County of Los Angeles can and does keep preservation as public policy. All right, so here we are. This is Allison Sarr's Embodied. Go.
All right, hello. So this is a piece by Allison Sarr. She's a Los Angeles artist. You might have heard of her mother, Betty Sarr, also a Los Angeles artist. Her mother is an assemblage artist, a collage artist, and her father is also an artist and a conservator. And so Allison Sarr really grew up in an artistic family and in a family that really likes material and likes to understand material and texture and also thinking about stories and spiritualism and lots of many layered thoughts on life and stories. And we were really, really honored to have a piece of hers on our collection. This is called Embodied. This is Lady Justice. The title is Embodied, but this is her interpretation of Lady Justice. And as you know, that's quite the sort of emblem of justice, the holding the scales with the sword and the blindfolded woman. But this statue doesn't have those attributes. First of all, you'll notice her face is not blindfolded, and her features are meant to be a composite of many different ethnicities, blending all the diverse cultures that make up Los Angeles County. Her eyes are open. She's looking ahead. She's looking beyond race, and she's looking beyond judgment. She doesn't need the blindfold anymore. And she doesn't have the scales or the sword. She has a book of law in one hand, and she has a dove in the other hand. And she's balancing freedom and peace and positive attributes. Because really what the DA and the sheriff is trying to do in this building is to keep peace and keep people safe. Another feature of this Lady Justice Embodied is her long braid. And the braid is meant to represent the coming together, the binding together of these different aspects of the law and our government, and how strong they become when they're woven together in a braid. And the braid is exaggeratingly long because it's about the long history of these agencies being together. You'll also see, if you come up close, the words that I mentioned before that are in the skirt. So she spent a lot of time speaking to staff in this building, and then also hanging out at Grant Park over here and talking to members of the public about what the word justice means to them. So these words are hand-stamped into the skirt of Our Lady Justice right here. And you're actually welcome if you have, if you brought your rice paper or weight paper. I have some charcoal if you want to do a rubbing and take home a little souvenir from today's visit. I'll let you into a little secret. This was actually not the first design that was put forward for the Hall of Justice. The first design was actually a much more abstract piece. But the staff at the time were really set on this idea of Lady Justice being the sort of face of this building. But we didn't want to do that sort of stereotypical Lady Justice. And so I think Allison did a really tremendous job of making a very contemporary version of this Lady Justice that's much more fair and much more exemplary of the people of Los Angeles County. And I'll tell you that the staff are very, very proud of this artwork now, and we're really happy. We know that their artwork is successful when the department puts it on their calendar. And they did, a huge calendar, and so that's always a good feeling. Because putting these artworks together it's not one person's task. This is a real group effort with our county departments and board of supervisors and art professionals and members of the public. It's a very lengthy, involved process. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have about this artwork. Unfortunately, Donna, who was here earlier, she actually worked on the renovation of this building. She was the conservation staff, and actually her job was to do an inventory of all the historic materials in the building and to make sure that these were replicated or reproduced or at least documented during the process of restoring this building. So she's got quite a few stories to tell if you see her again.
Are there any questions? Does anyone want to do a rubbing?
I have a question.
Yeah, Dion has a question.
Is that her hair going all the way down and coming back up again?
Yes, the question is that her hair? So as I said, her hair is this long braid, and it's meant to represent all the county agencies, sheriff, the DA, coming together and working to protect the people of Los Angeles County. And that long history of working together is why it's so long.
Can you tell us more about the process of how they solicited the words from all these languages?
Well, she merely went in and spoke to the staff that were gonna be using this building, and then she went and spoke to people in the park. And she just on her own interviewed people and said, what does justice mean to you? And it just so happened, because there's so many languages spoken in LA County, that there's 12 languages represented in the skirt. But that was just because that's the way it is here. Oh, the height. So as I mentioned when I was talking at Grand Central Market, the height of the statue is 12 feet tall. So it is meant to command your attention. But it's not so tall that you can't see into her face. You can't relate to her. She's definitely taller than most people. But it's still meant to be an approachable figure.
Okay. Let's look to wrap this up. Okay,
Is Leslie had to split?
Yeah.
Cecily, why don't we properly end this properly? Because the Triforium is not part of this talk, but the Triforium is within eyeshot, and then we can talk about the Triforium. Okay, so let's do that. So I want everyone to thank Clare. I want everyone to thank Dion. I want everyone to thank Cecily. Leslie's not here, but everyone thanks Cecily Young. The Lava Sunday Salon is off until January. Okay, we're off November, December. Nathan Marsack will be giving a talk and a walk about the development of aesthetics. In other words, next January. In other words, why did we decide in 1950 that the Victorian houses were ugly? So, yes.
We need a big thank you for Stephen Kim.
Oh, Richard Kim, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're happy to do this. Yeah, of course.
One more thing to add. Over here we have the Clare Shorridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center. In that building is the very first artwork commission that we completed once the Civic Art program was established for the Arts Commission and for the county. And it's a beautiful piece by Susan Schwarzenberg, and it's to honor Clare Shorridge Foltz. And if you don't know who she is, she was the first... She was the first female lawyer. She actually had to sue the bar. She developed the parole system. She separated juveniles from adults. She invented the public defender system. But she had to sue the bar to be able to become a lawyer because they didn't allow women to sit the bar at the time. And And she was a single mother of 5 children. And so there's an incredible memorial. There's 2 tapestries, and then some beautiful glass, etched glass photographs of her that tell the story of her life.
There's a Salon about it.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy is it's not in our collection anymore because the state owns the courthouses now. So the transfer of ownership went to the state. So it now is state-owned artwork, but I still keep an eye out for it.
All right. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you back in January. And stay subscribed to the list and stay in touch. And so now, okay, break. Great, Salon is done. Okay, Cecily, Triforium. Come on. Okay. So the Triforium. Should we just walk over here and see it? See it from. Let's. Are people up for this? Triforium, Joseph Young, very important. Okay, give me just a couple minutes to just wrap up loose ends. Kim, do you want to lead the way with Cecily over to the Triforium? Sure. And I'll bring up the rear? Okay, great. All right, Cecily, come on up. Let's go.
They had it working
okay.
Here at a nice gallery.
All right, let's get us oriented. So let's see.
Some of it was working.
The first photo we looked at the Salon was the old sandstone courthouse that I brought up repeatedly. This is basically where the person was standing that took that first photo of the sand looking that way. Where the Clare Shore, this beautiful brutalist 15-story structure, that's the Clare Shortbridge Fultz building that Claire was just talking about. That's basically where the old Richardsonian Romanesque courthouse was. And this is where the first photo we looked at in the Salon, this is where the person was standing that took the photo. All right, behind me, Cecily, is your father's 1975 multimedia installation, the Triforium. Go.
Well, I think a lot of you are familiar with this sculpture. It had originally, as I said, it was intended at the time of the building of the LA Mall. My father was in a competition among other artists to do a theme tower because malls in those days had some kind of structure in the middle of them. And, you know, a lot of those malls might have just had like a clock or bells or something like that. Well, he wanted this to be the symbol for Los Angeles because he realized how important this position was. It's their city hall right there. And so he envisioned something much more visionary, far-reaching, and technologically challenging. He wanted it to be something that blended art and technology to make something that had never happened before. My father was not a computer guy, so he was not the one who was going to do the programming. And remember, 1975, who programs? Who knew anything about computers then? And so
we have another.
We have another.
I can talk loud.
I have another. Yeah, don't worry. I'm ready. I'm ready. The battery lasts about 2 hours.
I'm going to send you an email and ask you what brand of PA you're using.
We're trying to find a better one right now.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So my timing is perfect.
Yeah, we'll see what we figure out.
Or maybe you'll sell your own.
It'll be fun that way.
I only need it for a year.
Yeah. Okay. So, long story short, this is meant to be an instrument. Really into the end of it? Okay. Long story short, it's meant to be almost like a new kind of instrument where you could put music, you could compose music. There was a piano control, and the music would be through some alchemical computer work in some unknown way would turn that music into a combination of lights, and how if you were to play classical music you could literally see crescendos and so forth on it. That was his vision, and the technology of the time wasn't really quite up to it. I mean, we could do it today, no problem. But in those days, you know, there were just a lot of complexities, and there are many. I mean, I I'm just reading the conservation report. It's unbelievably how complex it was to try to achieve that. There was also a carillon of bells, and they were made of glass.
Where's the carillon now? Does everyone know what a carillon is? It's a bell tower.
Okay, well, but this carillon was a new technology. It was actually in a cabinet, and it was tiny glass cylinders, each having a tiny metal striker in them and a microphone. And when you rotated it or you did something, it would strike the glass, and it would sounded like a huge bell, but it wasn't actually really a huge bell.
So let me guess. The reason we don't see the carillons is because the Department of Cultural Affairs has put it in safekeeping because it's such a precious commodity that they're concerned that it might be damaged and they will restore it. They want to take care of it.
Nope. Sadly, the tale is not that. It is more along the lines of we don't know how it happened, but it got sold.
The city sold it.
And so it's some guy somewhere has it in his garage, and he's not willing to sell it back. And I think
because Mike Fior hasn't sent it back.
Okay. So
Mike Fior is the city attorney.
I also want to point out one physical aspect of the Triforium. My father had hoped that the sound would emanate in a magical way without speakers. He was an artist. He didn't want to, he wanted to just go without speakers. He didn't want these things hanging down there. So those ladybug speakers that you see there were really not part of the original concept. And it is my dear dream that in the renovation of the Triforium, they take them down.
Ooh.
And we know that technology today can accomplish this. So right now there are a couple of, there's one big group, and I encourage you all to check it out on Facebook and elsewhere. It's called the Triforium Project. Great young people who, of all ages actually, who have embraced this sculpture, which has had a checkered history of public opinion. And I don't even need to tell you. You can Google it all and find all the jokes about it. But now I think the city's ready for it, and they certainly think so. And they raised money, and unfortunately the money's not enough yet, but we're hoping to raise more. And right now, the future of the Triforium is dependent on what they do with the block. This city is planning to do a lot of redevelopment.
Well, let me wrap that up right now.
And mention that it's not in the image.
Right. So we'll give you a chance to ask Leslie questions in a second, but she brings up the redevelopment of this immediate area. Parker Center is just over there. The 1956 Welton Beckett, former police headquarters. Parker Center, which contains an important mosaic by your father. Parker Center is going to be demolished by May of next year. Okay? The wrecking ball is coming. There is a lot of discussion, a lot of the preservation of your father's mosaic in Parker Center is on the table. So there's no doomsday clock, but it's very important. I bring up Parker Center's demolition because this entire area, you can see all the way to First and Los Angeles to here, the Los Angeles Mall, City Hall East, which is a gorgeous brutalist building. They want to tear that down. This entire area they want to redevelop as a retail shopping center with government offices on the upper floors. Wow, how original. So the fate of the Triforium needs advocates with the city, the agencies involved in the redevelopment of this mall to make sure it stays, to make sure there's money for it. So it's a really important time that Joseph Young's work in the immediate Civic Center owned by the city step up to the plate, which is why it's so important. Clare is awesome, and he's doing such a good job on the Joseph Young art that the county owns. Because the city's scared of the county. They are, trust me, they are. They won't admit that, but they are. All right, so questions for Leslie. Cecily, questions for Cecily. Go.
Now, this has played music though, right? I feel like I've heard music coming out of it.
It actually still can play music, but the one thing that it can't do is it can't translate the music in the way that it originally was intended and did do for a little bit at the beginning of its life. But very various changes have happened in the control room and wiring and whatnot and things not working. And so now if you see or witness it ever lighting up, it'll appear more like random patterns, which was not the design intent, and it did lead to that idea of the $1 million jukebox epithet.
So the lights did have worked, but I guess I just never drove by at night or something. So and interpreting the music, they were random.
So I think from what I understand, your father created a mechanical system to interpret mechanically that got pushed to a computer.
No.
It was all computer.
It was computers of 1975. So imagine that. It is as big as 2 refrigerators with beeping lights on the outside, just like in some old sci-fi movies.
It's an interesting challenge. Yes.
I see that a couple of the glass triangles are broken. Is there any maintenance on this structure?
Jan Perry kicked in $100,000.
The last time this was
Jan Perry in 2003, 2007, right before Jan Perry went out of office, she, God bless her, kicked some money over to take care of this out of her discretionary fund, an expenditure which the Department of Cultural Affairs has never seen fit to do, and they're tasked with maintaining it. So 2007, Jan Perry, out of the greatness of her heart.
Well, she cleaned it and
she funded it out of her general fund as the council member for this district, which is something the Department of Cultural Affairs never did. Before 2007, when is the last time you can remember any money the Department of Cultural Affairs?
Well, I would not have been tracking them, but I would say I don't know.
So very poor track record. Yes.
What do we want to know about your dad?
Yeah, I ask her this all the time. I've been getting her ready for this question. I've been priming her for 2 weeks. Come on, I've been asking this question for 2 weeks, so you can think about this.
You know, when I think of my dad as a creative person in the 60s and 70s and everything, and I was a child growing up in his house, I can tell you maybe what made my dad tick. What made your dad tick? Yes. It is the Broadway.
Okay, I'll say that. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been working on this.
So here's one aspect of it that you have to realize is kind of interesting. Artists, they want to break the mold, they want to change society, and my dad really believed that art could change the world.
Correctly.
Yeah, but at the same time, there was a little bit of traditional household ideas about male and female going on there. And so, while my mother was as much an artist as she was a pianist. That's part of the inspiration for mixing art and music in this sculpture. And he always said, and often said, it was a tribute to her. But at the same time, he was a sporty guy, but he had 2 girls, and so that was the end of that. No baseball, no football, like today, a dad would just take his girls out and do all that with them. But he just went to the health club instead. So that was kind of a little bit of what I can say. I do want to say, though, that he always approved of me being interested in architecture. I'm an architect. And I was inspired by his involvement with architecture, with buildings, such as the Neutra building that we just saw. And, so for me, we saw lots of models around his workshop. And all of that made me very interested in color and graphics and design and architecture. So, yeah, growing up with him, he was not an easy person. He was a bit of an egotist. I will admit to that, too. But that's okay. That's what artists are.
Good. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank
you. Good. Yes.
The lights appear to be on hinges. Were they supposed to move?
Question is, the lights are on hinges. Are they supposed to move?
No, that's just a maintenance aspect. So it's meant that you see some of them are rotated, not so that you can access or change them. There's literally light in every single one of those pieces, and there's 1,494 of them. So they needed a way to access them without removing how those got rotated and they're not turned back, I don't know.
And originally you said there was no speakers
In his original concept, there was no speakers, and then he was told the only way you'll get sound out of this is if we put these gigantic pods. And he always hated it, and he always talked about how he hated
There
it.
used to be wood ones, like curved wood speakers.
Not that I recall now. The Hollywood Bowl might have had those.
Okay, all right. I think we're going to wrap it up because we still have to do the podcast. Okay, everyone, thanks Cecily.
Thank you.
Claire, do you have 5 minutes to do the podcast interview? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to interview them for our podcast. I want to thank all of you for coming. Stay on the mailing list, stay plugged in, stay tuned for updates and everything, and we'll see you, if not sooner, in January for Nathan's talk and walk. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
I was up here in the school yesterday. It's really good. When is the next time you'll shoot me? I don't know. Next one, you're going
Right back.
I don't know. I just don't know.